Now let's bring in Republican Congressman James Comer of Kentucky. He is a member of the House Oversight Committee, one of those three committees overseeing the impeachment inquiry. Sir, it's great to have you with us this afternoon. Thanks for your time. So you heard what my colleague Ellison just reported, that excerpt from John Bolton's attorney from that letter they sent yesterday. Why doesn't President Trump want his own former national security advisor to testify?
Well, this whole process is a sham. I agree completely with what President Trump said. The president's not allowed to have his own counsel in there. I think that Adam Schiff has created a situation where the American people have lost complete confidence in this impeachment process being a fair process. And if Adam Schiff wants to have a fair process, then he needs to do this transparently, and he needs to let the president have his own counsel there.
But, sir, respectfully, I asked you about former National Security Advisor John Bolton. What could go wrong about having him testify to the committee behind closed doors? He was a tremendous ally of the president. He joined the federal government to specifically work on his team, carry out his national security vision. What's the harm in having him talk to the committee? Wouldn't it help the president?
Well, I think that right now the president has zero confidence in this being a fair trial. If it were a fair trial, I believe President Trump would welcome John Bolton coming to testify.
What about the other folks on this list? We have this witness wish list. It's got 8 people on it. The first person is Hunter Biden. What are the chances you think that you guys are going to be able to get him?
Well, if they really want to have a fair process and want the American people to have confidence in this impeachment inquiry, then they would let Hunter Biden come before Congress to testify. Because when I travel Kentucky, the biggest question I get from people in Kentucky is, well, what about Hunter Biden in this? You know, the mindset among a lot of people in America, at least 50% of America, is the only corruption that's come out of this transcript is the potential corruption by Hunter Biden. It's certainly a conflict of interest to have a vice president's son with no background in the energy industry profiting at such a large amount from a company that he has no background in. And they haven't been transparent in why exactly Hunter Biden was a member of that board of directors and why he was getting paid such a large salary.
Well, he's also,
I think that's a fair question.
The obvious fact here is that Hunter Biden's also a Democrat, right? He worked pretty closely with his father at times on his presidential campaign. So why do you want the American people to hear from another Democrat who's going to be very critical of President Trump, very critical of this entire administration, and obviously going to look as, you know, to defend himself as much as possible? Don't you want to get people on the witness stand who you know are on your own side?
I do, and I think there have been some people that have been deposed that have given very favorable testimony for President Trump. Volker is one. I think that we need to.
Yeah, and he's on the list.
Right,
sure,
and we need the American people to see that a lot of people that were in the room that were in the know, and a lot of the people that have made accusations, they weren't even on the phone call. They weren't in the room. They're just repeating hearsay. But the people that were in the room on the call believe that there was certainly no quid pro quo on behalf of the president, and that the president was simply doing what a president should do, ensuring that if we're going to give hard-earned American tax dollars to a foreign country in the form of foreign aid, that country needs to eliminate all potential corruption. And certainly, if you look at the Hunter Biden situation, there's potential corruption there when you go back to thinking of, remembering the things that Joe Biden tried to get the Ukrainian government to do to look the other way. I think that, you know, certainly the American people want to see Hunter Biden on the stand. I think the American people would like to hear what John Bolton has to say as well.
What about this letter that Devin Nunes from the Intelligence Committee wrote to the chairman, Adam Schiff, saying he wants him, the chairman, to sit for a deposition? What are you hoping to get from Schiff that you haven't gotten already? He's been talking to us reporters over there every single day.
He has been talking to the reporters, but if you go back to what Adam Schiff said initially, he didn't know who the whistleblower was. We suspect that there has been a relationship and there has been conversations between the whistleblower and Adam Schiff, and I think that's a question
sir, that's a stretch. We know for a fact, according to multiple witnesses' testimony, also according to Schiff and his staff, that he himself has not spoken to the whistleblower. Reporting up to this point is that a staffer for Schiff spoke to the whistleblower.
Well, I think that's something that Adam Schiff should be required to talk about under oath in the light of day. So that's something that I think would make the process more fair. A lot of Americans believe that this is a political witch hunt. A lot of Americans believed, and rightfully so, that the Mueller report was an unfounded political witch hunt.
All right, sir, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we are coming up against a hard break. We've got to leave it there. Thank you, sir, for your time today. We really appreciate it. We'll have you back soon.
Thank you very much.